The transfer portal is the best thing to happen to college athletics since Teddy Roosevelt invented the helmet. This is Locked On Baylor. He didn't invent the helmet, it's the joke. That's what's funny about it.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Baylor. I am Sunburnt from Sports Illustrated's Inside the Bears. That is Cameron Stewart, the Skip Goring Baylor Baseball Fan of the Year. Thank you for making Locked On Baylor your first listen every single day. And so sorry to our friends from Austin that Baylor had to be Texas's Super Bowl in baseball. Glad you guys got that win, though. Good to see you guys all excited and happy about that. Cam, I am going to make the point, because I've seen videos of Fran McCaffrey and Dick Vitale. If you don't know who they are, Google it. Read a book, idiot. And
I haven't had anyone on my Twitter timeline dumping on Fran McCaffrey in weeks, and I'm getting worried.
Yeah, well, they both came out and
collectively we're worried.
They said that the transfer portal is killing college basketball. It's killing college athletics. And Dick Vitale's point, this is really funny. Dick Vitale's point was basically, hey, the problem is the mid-major players are leaving the mid-majors for the big teams. Dick's got a point. It is hurting some mid-major programs. But Cameron, might I introduce you to a young man by the name of Marquise Knoll, University of Arkansas Little Rock Trojan, who is now the best point guard in college basketball. And it only happened because of the transfer portal. So, Dick, if I can flip it around a little bit there, this thing is giving mid-major players the opportunity to become NBA caliber prospects. Cam, I think the transfer portal is great.
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings about it, but pushing back on this point from the Dickster here, because he's not the only one making that point, but yet all of those people are all the ones who have been upset for 20 years now that guys are staying for 1 year and then leaving. 15 since it's been the rule, basically.
Which is me, by the way. I love the transfer portal and hate the one and done. So,
but you also like the transfer portal because the transfer portal is going to allow for more of these guys to stay 3 or 4 years, and we're going to see them at the Kentuckys and the Dukes and the Kansases, which we weren't seeing them. This was the schools they were complaining about. Well, now they're much more likely to have those veteran-laden teams because good players are staying in the transfer portal and they're not stuck at VCU the whole time or Arkansas Little Rock or the University of Seattle. They're playing for Kansas State,
I think it's
Oklahoma
Seattle
State.
University, by the way.
Whatever. So anyway, that pushes back on their point. Now, do I love the transfer portal? It's nice. Like, I understand why it is there and how it is helpful. What I've been surprised at is not those guys going from Arkansas Little Rock to the big time, but the Tyrese Hunters of the world. We're seeing a lot of that. And guys staying in conference, the LJ Criers of the world, the Kevin O'Banners, where they're good players at good programs. And they're just like, I can go a little bit bigger. And it's like, okay, I don't love that either. That's what I was a little more surprised to see. I'm surprised at the numbers that are going in, especially in basketball. I mean, it's insane. 1 in every 5, basically. It hit the transfer portal this offseason. I didn't expect to see that high volume of numbers, but until it gets regulated, we're going to continue seeing that, and we are going to continue to see probably a bit of an uneven playing field, but that is college athletics, baby.
I would declare prima nocta.
I shocked you there for a second, didn't I?
So
powerful.
I wanted to let it sit before I told the people at home that I would declare prima nocta for the transfer portal. I'm in love with it. This is a love thing because I'm of the belief if your name is Little John Cryer, LJ, as many of you have known him,
yes,
and you don't want to play for Baylor men's basketball, I don't want you to play for Baylor men's basketball.
Right. That's why it's a good thing. You don't want people forced to stay there, or they get in trouble with not in trouble, but they get on odds with their coach like Eddie Lampkin did. you don't want them to suffer. Like, that's why it's a good thing. It's good that they're making money. It's just when you're a Baylor fan though, and you're, on the small end of your competition, there's some things you don't like about it, and that you probably won't like about it.
Lorando Johnson, goodbye.
Snacks
Johnson, goodbye. Who are the other guys? I've already Micah Mazkua. Goodbye. There's another secondary player, the transfer.
Al Walcott.
Al Fahim. Goodbye. Goodbye. I am to the point now, and I've talked to many coaches who are this way. It's like, look, if the transfer portal didn't exist, you would still be miserable here. You entered the transfer portal for some reason, whether that was disciplinary, you were unhappy, you weren't getting enough playing time. If it didn't exist, you would simply be stuck. So now, if you are a team, and
you still would have to sit. I mean, people did transfer. You sat out the year. It does change your college career quite a bit.
People would avoid transferring because they had to sit out a year. They would stay miserable, so they didn't have to sit out a year. They didn't want to hurt the draft stock. Didn't want to wait. And I understand that, and I'm glad that's not the rule anymore. Look at and if you're an Iowa State women's basketball fan, why the hell are you listening to this show today? Probably because I said it's great and you hate it. Your entire team has entered the transfer portal. Guess what? That probably means your coach sucks. It probably means your program isn't good. And maybe it comes from a point of privilege being a Baylor fan. I like the transfer portal because people are not leaving in droves because they just don't like the coach or because they didn't feel like they were getting enough of something. Like this is a university that recruits players that don't want to enter the transfer portal. They want to come here from the portal knowing that they'll fit in and not have to worry about NIL. At the same time, in the NIL conversation we'll get into, at the same time, Baylor's not Syracuse. Do you see what Syracuse did this week?
Syracuse is a mess right now.
Syracuse, Jim Boeheim retired, and all hell broke loose. They said, you know what? If Jim Boeheim's retiring, I'm not giving you a cent. And you know what? Those Cavender twins that are making millions of dollars, we don't want that. We would rather lose every game than pay our hardworking players a damn dime. You want money? Not in Syracuse, New York, you don't. You want these broadcast proteges to be able to call good baseball, basketball, football? Not anymore. We don't. We couldn't give a crap less.
And that's one of those athletic departments, like a Baylor, not saying that this is going to happen, but you're not big enough to play that card, man. You're going to fall right off the map. If you don't want to evolve, good luck to you. I mean, you are going to fall right out of relevancy as an athletic department. You kind of already have, to be honest. But
by the way, Baylor would not be the most shocking university to come out in the next year and be like, you know what? We tried it. We're done. No more NIL for you. No money for anybody. Mostly because Dr. Livingstone, the president, has been on the conservative end of topics such as NIL and the transfer portal. But I think, and I didn't want to dive completely into the NIL yet before we wrap up this transfer portal deal. I look at Grant McCasland. You know the name, Grant McCasland?
I do know the name Grant McCasland, yeah.
Texas Tech. He's a Baylor. He's an assistant at Baylor, head coach at Texas Tech, and has a really good run with guys like Tyler Perry over at Texas Tech, or at North Texas, I'm sorry. Now he's at Texas Tech. Guess what? Because he's got the leeway as a coach to leave whenever he wants and makes millions of dollars. I'll be honest with you here, Grant McCasland, I'm sorry. You're not the reason that United Supermarkets Walmart Arena is going to be filled next season. The reason's the players. The players win the games. You have the opportunity to move up or down or around as much as you want and make millions of dollars. And the people who are actually putting butts in seats don't have that freedom. And now the Fran McCaffreys of the world are upset with that. I don't understand how you can be upset with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole argument. That's the crux of the argument that's been going on for 20 years.
How is it not objective?
Yeah. It is. I think it is. It sucks.
If you disagree, put in the comments why you're wrong. Please put in the comments and explain to me how you are incorrect.
That players just shouldn't get paid at all.
Players shouldn't get paid in the transfer portal that's ruined college athletics. It has created this was, if not the second most, it was the most anarchy of any NCAA tournament all time. All time.
Sure.
No one seeds in the Final Four. A 16 beating a 1, which has only happened now twice. And So you say that the transfer portal is killing college athletics. I would think that that coach from Fairleigh Dickinson, who I've already forgotten his name. What's his name? Do you know his name?
No.
15 Minutes of Fame. Awesome. What's the UMBC's coach? Who's their coach? Yeah.
Who would know?
Exactly. Name one player from either of those teams, by the way.
That's the point of this, Drake. You have no idea.
And it gave them a great opportunity.
Ali Farouk Manesh. Bryce Drew.
And it gave them an opportunity. Look, Bryce Drew could have been a hell of a player at Ole Miss. He could have pulled a Makai Mason.
Oh, wouldn't that have been something? Huh?
Could have beaten Ole Miss and then just gone to Ole Miss and then probably had a better NBA draft. So yeah, he had a couple good years.
Hey, Indiana was getting rid of a guard at that time, right? The choke kid.
Oh,
he was out the door.
Yeah,
he could have gone State and State. Played for the Hoosiers.
Oh,
imagine playing for your dad, who is also Homer Drew, resident nice guy, and then playing for Bobby Knight.
Yeah.
Apples to apples, brother.
I saw Scott Drew at a Firehouse Subs this weekend. That's insider baseball.
Really?
That's insider baseball. You folks did not know he was at Firehouse Subs this weekend. You know what's almost as good? Almost as good as FanDuel? Firehouse Subs. But it's not as good as FanDuel because at FanDuel, you can make money. I have never once been into a Firehouse Subs and left with more money in my pocket. I have not. FanDuel, you can do that. You can go right now, make a Locked On Baylor FanDuel bet for $1,000, up to $1,000 in bonus bets. If you don't win, place your first bet, get up to $1,000. I put $1,000 on the Kings to win a basketball game against the Warriors. They're doing that this week. Davion Mitchell. If it hits, you get $1,000. Congratulations. If it doesn't hit, or more, if it's plus odds, if it does not hit, you get $1,000 in free play. That's free play. It's free for you. You get to play with it for free. FanDuel.com/locked on to sign up. You place your first bet, you get up to $1,000 back. You could do like Aaron Judge to hit a home run. You could do like a pitcher, like a Woodward, Jake Woodward for the Cardinals to go over on strikeouts. Have a same game parlay of your favorite MLB matchup of the day. All that and more. Don't miss your chance for no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Go to FanDuel.com/locked on to sign up. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Go to FanDuel. All right, so let me. I truly believe that I'm being objective with this.
You usually are, yeah.
Every subjective person has ever said in their life. I'm being subjective with this topic, or objective with the topic that the transfer portal is good for college athletics, that it's good for these athletes because you're Marquise Knowles of the world. Here is the flip side. Here is where I understand. I am not like Dick Vitale.
In a lot of ways.
In many ways. Number one, that I don't like Pepto-Bismol. Not at all. Can't drink that stuff. Number two, my argument against the transfer portal has nothing to do with killing mid-majors. It is helping the Fairleigh Dickinsons of the world. This is helping a lot of mid-majors have a lot of success. My argument would be guys like, that's the point, is there's not a name. The ones who drop off the table. The ones who are these, was it James Wiseman? Who's the guy?
No, I think you're thinking of Amani Bates.
Amani Bates.
Eastern Michigan.
Amani Bates. What? That's the problem.
Drafted.
That's the problem. Is guys like that. He is the like almost the exception to this rule of the guys who are 5 stars and you just never hear from them again because they enter the transfer portal. Nobody big picks them up. They go to some random mid-major and they transfer again. And by then they're at Henderson State University in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. That's
not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong. I have plenty of friends on both sides who went to Henderson State University. Good people. And
okay. Okay.
And it sucks for those kids. Is that the one downside to the portal? The big glaring downside?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's the only downside. Again, because if it continues to be unregulated, then yes, the downside for schools like Baylor there are a lot competition-wise. And some of that's on Baylor because they don't have this NIL trust the same way that some of these other schools do. Right. I'm not trying to make an excuse, but when you talk about, let's just talk football in general. So the Baylors and the TCUs and the Northwesterns and the, I don't know, Cal's even small enough, but it's got some resources. Syracuse, absolutely. Those schools, Boston College, they start to fall by the wayside if if this continues to be unregulated, because even if they put together a good NIL trust, they're just never going to beat out UT or A&M or Georgia or, even North Carolina when they're able to funnel this money into their programs, right? So again, that's not to say that Baylor can't do anything, but that's a bad side. If you're a Baylor fan, that's a downside to the transfer portal and the NIL and all that goes with it.
I don't know. I'm going to push back. I'm going to push back on that.
Okay.
Example being 15 years ago, Clemson. Clemson would have been in the conversations of the Baylor, the Northwestern. It would have been
correct. Okay.
It's like
I'll go with you on that. Yeah.
Got some decent history, right? And the right coach comes in, a guy who today has said of the NIL, I want to play in God's name, image, and likeness. That
He's not
same,
a fan. Yep.
That same man has been not a fan of the transfer portal or NIL. So obviously he can't be winning in the transfer portal or the NIL, because if you're winning in it, you're not going to hate it. So he is struggling in that category and winning a lot of football games.
Yeah, won 2 national championships before in the transfer portal and NIL. So, I mean, not to say that he's not running a good program now. And yeah, that is a pushback, but Clemson is bigger than those schools that I listed, to be fair. They are.
By what?
They are.
By what? But I would categorize Clemson with the 15 years ago. They were Baylor and Syracuse and Northwestern. They're not the dominant school in South Carolina.
Other schools were really bad.
Still today, they're not the dominant school in South Carolina. They're not the dominant brand of the state.
I mean, correct. Yeah. I mean, they were a football power, I guess.
Ken Hatfield did win a national championship there. I know that.
Championship, I mean,
91.
To me, that sounds like you're describing Pitt, not being dominant against Penn State, but Pitt's always had good athletics, especially football for the majority of their history.
Right. I get what you're saying.
Bigger school than us to where they can put some more money into it.
Because Baylor circa 15 years ago had done pretty much nothing.
Yes,
ever.
They were pretty bad, and Northwestern was even worse. So
yeah.
Yes. So when you get those dynamic coaches, there is still that chance. Let's use our examples again. Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern has done an excellent job. I expect Dave Aranda to continue to do a good job. I even expect Sonny Dykes to continue to do a good job, not go to the national championship game, but I believe in him as a football coach.
Have they gone to the national championship game?
Recently? TCU? Yes, recently.
That's huge.
They were invited anyway.
TCU played for a national championship. That is insane. I mean, that helps the brand. It helps the Big 12.
Sure does, brother.
What was the score? That's insane. Who they play?
You actually back yourself up on your own point there that did happen in the transfer era in NIL. And I'll just say, man, when student athletes are going for money, they're not going to go to TCU or Baylor or Northwestern.
They're not. But I don't want the players who are coming here for money.
I get that. And that's another side of the argument. That's absolutely. And I agree with you.
So what school?
But when you ask what could be the downside for a school like Baylor's, like ours, like that's what the downside is there are athletes that are like that out there.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to sink this athletics program like a minority of people think. But I wouldn't say it's all sunshine and rainbows in the NIL world for Baylor athletics.
Okay. I just believe Baylor is in a better culture point than some of the other tier 2 athletic universities.
And I will agree with you 100% there.
Baylor is a tier 2 athletic university. Yes. What does that mean? You can win national championships in every sport except for football. There are only 12 to 15 tier 1 athletic universities. These are your LSUs, your Ohio States, your Michigans. Those schools, Alabama, even in Oklahoma could be considered in that conversation.
Yes, I would say Oklahoma and Texas would both be considered in there.
Yes, I think so. Baylor, tier 2 university. And a lot of great schools are. One that I'm going to bring up, Arkansas. Arkansas, Baylor, 2 tier 2 universities. But I think the culture at Baylor is much stronger than the culture at Arkansas. So then if you're having this conversation for Locked On Razorbacks, it probably goes a lot different. If you're an Arkansas fan, despite the amount of great athletes they have coming in the transfer portal in basketball, for most every other program, it's like, And I'm sure a lot of their coaches, the Sam Pittmans, the Dave Van Horns, their baseball program would say, I don't like NIL, I don't like transfer portal, because the culture at that school is different than a Baylor. Baylor, it's a big buy-in to this Christian mission. Person over player doesn't exist at Arkansas. That's not the forefront of what they tell you day one when you walk in. So I would assume that, yes, if you're a Pitt and Arkansas, you probably don't like the NIL or transfer portal when you truly boil it all down, because your culture is not strong enough to bring in Jalen Petries.
True. But I think also they're saying, well, at least we have the money to buy a good player from those tier 2 schools. Not Jalen Petrie, but they could buy somebody from, I mean, look, it's no secret that in this very example, 2 of Baylor starters transferred out in football and 2 of them went to Arkansas. Yeah. So that's I think where the flip side is, where Baylor can't have that. Baylor's like, we need to have the culture thing because we can't lure these kids away with money. And again, I agree with you. And at the end of the day, I'd prefer that. I'd rather them lure these kids in through the culture and through the sustainability and success of the programs and the coaching staff. But that's where the difference is. And that's where we might start to see even more separation between those top second tier and bottom second tier, the way we see the middle class.
This was an enlightening conversation today.
You know what? I try, man. I try.
I really thought you did well. I thought you did well.
You know what? Thanks, Drake.
Coming off a tough Baylor baseball loss.
Yeah.
Felt like a win. Honestly felt like a win.
A little cooked too.
Hard. You know what? I was a live wire today, so I'm glad during this show that you could push back. I
might have heard him today.
Passionate on this topic. Of portal and NIL. I could talk about it for a long time. We'll probably do it again.
There's so many wrinkles though, too, man. I think it's objectively a good thing, but we can have this all day long. There's so many things that are good for Baylor in it, but still others that are not good. And there's enough that it's almost evening out the scales. And we could have the same conversation in 2 weeks and maybe like, I hate it. It's the worst. Our whole baseball team's leaving. Which could be the case. Here's where culture meets the road. Trying to think of a good example before we go here of like programs that just bought it. Is it like Florida football? Obviously not the days of NIL. They weren't really buying it, but like Urban Meyer, culture guy. Yeah. Yeah. Go to Florida because it's Florida. Dude, I'm going to be honest with you. I've spent time around Kirby Smart's program 2019. I spent time, I was around the program in media and behind the scenes for the Sugar Bowl, and Kirby Smart was a bad dude. Really? Maybe not is he succeeding in this era? He didn't kill people, obviously, but if I played for Kirby Smart, I'd be really, really scared and afraid. And he was super whoa, dude. Whoa. There's a lot going on. Not a great culture, but guess what? Come make millions of dollars and win national championships. I bet Nick Saban guys in the pros, to be fair, right. I bet Nick Saban doesn't give out a lot of hugs. There's just these people aren't necessarily great people. And if you had asked me before last year, I would have said that's a good culture, even though it's hard on you. It's tough. But these kids graduate, they play pro football, that they rarely got into trouble until the last couple of years. It's a culture of winning. Last 2 years. It's a culture of winning. And if that's what you value, then do it. Dive into NIL. If that's what you value is a culture of winning, then you're a tier 2 school, you hate NIL and you hate transfer portal. There you go. That's it. By the way, I guess to be fair, I don't know how many of these guys who are hitting the portal are going to Alabama and Georgia. There are definitely some, but it's not like oh my God, they're poaching. Right. They're poaching the best player from all the weak teams in their conference. Not really poaching Baylor either. So no. And guess what? If you're Arkansas, you're Austin Novosad. Okay. You didn't want to go to Baylor. All right. You can't go to Baylor and Oregon. See you later, dude. I texted him a while ago. He's a something. I'm Drake Toll. It's Cameron Stewart. Thanks for making Locked On Baylor your first listen every single day. Keep doing it, guys. We had 26,000 views on the show last week because people agreed with me for once in my life. They agreed with me. Oh, stop the press. Worst person you just made a great point. Oh, this has been and always will be Locked On Baylor. See you guys tomorrow. I usually that's not how I'm going to say it. Locked On Baylor.